Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This unassuming little guy is the Remette RT Bee G, the version with G10 and 14C28, and instead of titanium and M390, I believe the premium one was M390, but the other one that I reviewed was way more expensive. This guy, far less expensive, and definitely a lot more appealing to people who want to utilize its hidden element, which I'll show off here in a second. But this guy in G10 and 14C28N comes in at about $57, which is more than appropriate. I really like this knife. I think it was a good move doing a budget version, and I think that will be far more interesting to a lot of people. So I'm going to link this guy down in the description where you can check it out if you'd like. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. What's the hidden element? Well, this guy has what they call the fruit fork, which is the detachable little toothpick thingy. Now, you can use this as a toothpick if you want, which is kind of gross, but the fruit fork or food fork idea is great. What I like is the idea that you have something attached to the knife that you can use instead of the tip of your knife, which is something that everybody's dad and grandpa do, and it just destroys the tip and makes it unusable or far less usable. Instead, beat up on this. Use this to scrape and to poke and do all that weird stuff. Obviously, clean it if you're going to use it for food, but it's nice that you've got that attached to the knife. And honestly, what's responsible for keeping it in place is pretty heavy. I mean, like, you'd really have to, knock it or intentionally pull on it to get this to come out, right? So it's not likely that this is something that's going to be easily lost. But this is, a lot easier to deal with the idea of having something attached to your knife that you also have to keep track of. It's a lot easier to choke down when the knife itself is $57 instead of like $200 or a little more than $200. So I like this idea. I think it's really cool. And this review is going to be very similar to the review on the premium one because they are almost exactly the same, save for a few elements. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on it. I'm going to go through specs super fast. Overall length of the RT Bee G coming in at 7 inches with a 3. It's like the blade length is like 3 1/16, and then your cutting edge is 2.85. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. Much closer to the size of the 80 20.5, but it does actually have more cutting edge despite being a smaller knife. Nowhere near the size of the 8010. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Once again, closer to the size of the smaller one here, the Para 3, but again, more cutting edge. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Group Tillionaire, in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. I'm trying to straighten these out so you guys can actually get a good idea. How is the action? It's identical to the premium one. Access to, in this case, the liner lock here, very good, nice and cut out there. The lock bar tension isn't crazy high, so there's a little bit of a ledge there, but you don't feel it because it's not an insane amount of tension. It's exactly what it should be, right? Thumb studs are nicely sized. They decided not to do little teeny tiny dinky pointy little stupid, I hate that. It's a small knife. Let's make him super sharp like this, like a little elf hat. Don't do that. It hurts our thumbs. We don't like it, right? I say we, unless there's like one guy that's like, I love it. I love the feeling of a metallic elf's hat poking into my thumb. No, you don't. This is the way. This is the way to do this. No double clutch. That flipper tab is very, very low profile, but it's just enough there to catch your thumb after the detent ball is up on the face of the blade. So as you can see here, no double clutch. The thumb studs are super usable in terms of the standard thumb flick and the ever popular reverse flick, right? And then the flipper tab is also nice too. Honestly, it just has a really, really nicely tuned detent to accommodate for all 3 systems. This is a very easy knife to deploy and disengage. Nothing is frustrating, right? Especially at the price point. Carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is perhaps slightly thicker, but it's also contoured, which a slight increase in thickness with contouring, like, I'm going to give it a pass. So there you go. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is both shorter than the Para 3 in terms of length, and it's also shorter in terms of height. So that's good. I mean, like if you are looking for a compact knife design, right? Obviously much smaller than the Spyderco PM2. let's go ahead and weigh it. But in order to weigh things, what you need is a scale. And in order for the scale to do its job, it has to be easily accessible. There we go. Sorry, I lost it for a second. Needed to come up with something to say to buy time. So the weight on this guy with the steel liners, the G10 and the 14C28N, which are the materials used in this knife, forgot to say that, 3.6 ounces. Not bad. Not perfect ratios, but not bad at all. The balance on this knife is actually right there behind the pivot where you're going to have your index finger in the standard grip. So it's nice. It doesn't feel bulky or heavy in any way. Perhaps some people are going to look at the combination of the contoured scales and, you know, with the addition of the liners, which honestly would have been really nice if they had like nested them, but they didn't. Despite that, it still feels really good because it's contoured, right? There's a little bit of a ledge here, not bad, not sharp or anything like that, but yeah, it feels good. Okay, hardware check. Let me get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. Most likely T8 all the way around, T8 pivot, yeah, body screw, T8. They only have one on each side, probably something lipped in here to hold the backspacer in place, but that's nice. Do we even have T8 pocket clip screws? We do. Remette, you beautiful, beautiful company. We have T8 pocket clip screws. Can you believe that? Every other company's like, oh, T6, oh, that'll piss them off. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. That's really nice. Very easy to take apart and put back together as long as you have the right tools for the job. You should be good to go. Let's measure the blade stock thickness. I really doubt this is any different than the premium one, which I would compare, but I gave it away on a live stream. 116 thousandths. So there you go, nice and thin. Okay, meat and potatoes time. It really is incredibly, it's almost identical to the titanium one, despite having, I think, a different pocket clip. I do like the elements of the pocket clip. We have the nested clip itself. We have the nested, or the recessed screws. We have a drop and then a slight bill, which is exactly what I want Civivi to do, that they just refuse to do. What they do is they drop and then come up and then slightly over, which gives it a hook. It gives it something that it makes it easier for the pocket clip to snag on things, and it also is more in the middle of your palm. So this is closer to what I want from Civivi. I think it's just too long for this knife. It's not bad though. Like where the pocket clip lands in the standard hammer grip is annoying. It'd be right here behind this callus, right? It's not the most comfortable thing in the world. Choked up, it's definitely better. It's landing more so like back here. I just wish it was the same clip, just shorter, right? We don't necessarily need, having a shorter clip, a lot of people make the argument, oh, well, it makes it easier to fall out of your pants. No, it doesn't, because the same amount of contact between the clip and the scales is present. The length of it just dictates the depth of the knife in your pocket, but the total amount of material responsible for keeping the knife in your pocket is the same. So it would take a very, very specific and rare example where length of clip alone is solely responsible for the knife being kept versus lost. But if somebody wants to set up that scientific experiment, I would be more than happy to watch. I just don't, I don't think that's a good argument. I would prefer that it is shorter so that it is essentially the same in terms of utility. It's just ergonomically more pleasant to deal with. But okay, I digress. Sorry. I understand why Nick says that. Like, it's so easy to get lost in the weeds of the particulars, right? But another sort of issue with this is that they just were like left-handed people don't exist, right? We have we've just why I like lost my train of thought completely. I'm trying to come up with a good example, a good flow here in terms of what I'm saying. We've just totally left-handed people out in favor of this little, this little weenie poker here. Sausages. Get your mind out of the gutter. That's what I would use it for. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that it's there, but also like could you not have, there should be a way to make this area both the mounting position for the clip and the slot for this thing on either side. I really don't think it would be that difficult to do this, right? I mean, it's a similar shape, and all we have to do is just make an area on each side of the scale that will accept a long, pointy metal object, which, by the way, is made of titanium. So that's cool, even on this guy, right? But yeah, it's weird that we just left that out, but okay. Blade shape, just really, really good for EDC. It's not absolutely, the thinnest blade you'll ever feel, but it's plenty thin, nice and slicey. We have it's not quite like it's like an overcast sky finish, right? It's some sort of media blasting. It could be, it's probably not glass, maybe it's a ceramic glass. I'm not really sure. But it's a nice finish, right? It'll resist scratching okay. 14C28N, what are they hardening it to? 58, 59, which is definitely not as hard as it can get. But let me be clear, it is still well within the recommended HRC range for 14C28N. 14C28N is not a steel that's winning any awards for edge retention, even at its hardest. Now, could they have gone a little bit harder? Yeah, I think 59, 60 is kind of where people like to see it. 58 to 59, or I think that's what they have it listed at. Could be 58 to 60. That's not bad at all. It's just fine. This has a good balance. It's very, very tough. It's stainless, and it's super easy to touch up. So I think their range is fine. If they bumped it up 1 point, it probably would make a lot of people happy. I don't know, especially with this type of steel, after a good afternoon of use on something like this, you're going to have to resharpen it either way, right? It's not until you get up into some of the specialty steels that are really emphasizing potential for edge retention, where each point is going to have a dramatic effect on the overall, the length of edge retention you get out of it. But we're getting into too many variables here. I think it's fine is what I'm trying to say. Super utilitarian, sheep's foot blade, nice belly, will be very, very easy to touch up. Because of the forward choil area, which is reasonably comfortable, right? The flipper tab is not incredibly prominent, so it doesn't confine you quite as much as something like, let's say, the Hinder XM18, or especially on the 3-inch, my God. The thumb stud is only partially blocking a small percentage of the initial cutting path, so I don't really have an issue with that. On one side, it says Remette, and it says nothing on the other side. I think somewhere on the blade, no, it actually doesn't. It doesn't say what the blade steel is at all, but it is. It is 14C28N. Carry experience with this guy versus the titanium one, it was essentially identical, right? Outside of the other one being made of titanium being a little bit, I think not even really all that much heavier. I mean, in my mind, they were essentially indistinguishable from each other. I think the other one had a different pocket clip, which makes sense because it was the premium one, right? But really, really similar. Some people like the holes on the knife, some people don't, right? In this case, not an enormous amount of character going on with this knife. It's actually pretty straight. The one unique element here is the little, or semi-unique element. It's not like nobody's ever put a poker on a knife before, but the little fruit fork, right? It's neat that that's there. The holes, you could say that it adds a little character. If the holes weren't there, it would look even more generic. Either way, this is a very generic looking knife, but it's a good combination of materials, a good level of, machining quality. Remette always makes a really good knife, whether it's a budget knife or a premium knife. They do a really good job. Very recommendable to people who are newer in the knife world for sure. But yeah, the fruit fork is the main element there. And like I said, there is the potential to lose this for sure. I think you'd really have to be not paying attention. Like when you put this back, there's a fair amount of friction holding that thing in, right? So it would take like a glancing, like just running my finger on top of this and trying, see, it took quite a bit and I had to angle down to really get that out of there. So is the potential to lose this there? Oh yeah, definitely. But it's not loosey-goosey. And maybe over time, if you're like constantly, if you're like, I got 8 barbecues to go to this week and I always bring my RTBG with me and I always, if you're like really putting the miles in on this thing, then obviously you're more at a risk to lose it. Most of the time, this is going to be a pocket knife that sits in your pocket until you just need to use it specifically for some task, right? If this is your dedicated blade for all things that you could possibly use a blade for, and you work at a job where you're using a knife all the time, obviously your risk of losing this type of thing is much higher, much, much higher. In that case, I would say it's probably almost inevitable that you'll lose it, just being realistic there. But general, EDC, where you're getting your pocket knife out once, twice, 3 times a day to do simple cuts, and then this thing comes out hardly at all, but periodically when you just need to, you got to scrape something out of some area, or you got to get at something you can't quite reach, or just you want to do something that does not involve beating up the tip of your knife, because you shouldn't be doing that anyway. Well, then you've got this, right? And if, you're going to use it for food, clean it off, because if you don't, that's gross. But yeah, I mean, like if you're not using the knife, if you're using this like a general EDC knife, just like periodic, you're probably going to be okay. I don't think in and out of the pocket, like pushing this in the pocket, is when you would have friction moving up. Not once did this budge at all, right? Pretty smooth surface on the inside of a pocket. Obviously, pulling it out is going to create friction pulling it back down, so that's not going to do it, especially considering that the pocket clip is only mountable for tip up carry. So, yeah. There's a lanyard bar, so great. Lanyard people, you're good to go there. Again, wish the pocket clip is a little shorter, but it's no big deal. Your stop pin is located in its traditional position. Nice shouldering there. No blade play up, down, left, or right. Remette does a good liner lock, so I think you're good to go. That's all the more I'm going to test locks on this channel. A light triple tap. Any knife should be able to withstand that, as long as you're not doing any like major prying, or obviously don't baton with something like this. You'll be fine. So yeah, your lockup, no blade play up, down, left, or right. No lock stick, no double clutch, no pivot lash. Smooth and consistent in here as it should be, and a nice click in the closed position with perfect centering and no detent lash. $57. This isn't going to win any like most innovative awards, and it's not like, oh my gosh, everybody should be rushing, like drop what you're doing and go buy this knife. No, but is it a good knife? Yeah, it's a great knife. I mean, the little fruit fork thing is a really good idea. There's plenty of times where I've got my pocket knife and I'm like, I really shouldn't use the tip for this, but oh well, it's a cheap knife, In this case, you don't even have to do that. You can continue to let the blade do blade things, right? Poking and cutting things that are nowhere near as hard as the blade. And then if you want to beat up on something, then use that, right? I mean, who cares if the thing becomes less of a needle? This thing is a freaking needle. It probably could use some doling down. So yeah, knock yourself out. I think that's just fine. I really wish that this could be flipped around, right? Just make this part symmetrical and allow it to be interchangeable with the position of the pocket clip. That shouldn't be that difficult to do. Then left-handed people can use it. So it does have a little visible detent in there. I just noticed that while I was pushing it in. Like you can see that little nub right there. So that's what is creating the friction, right? And that's what's holding it in there. There's no play or anything like that in this position right here. So it really should stay there during normal use. Only if you're using this like as your dedicated cutting tool and you're using it constantly, that's when I would worry that you might lose it, right? And if you do, well, the knife still works. You just don't have the fruit fork thing anymore. So anyways, that's it. This is going to go in my cheap knives I like playlist because it is legitimately a great budget knife and I like it. Please make sure, links for this down in the description. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at the_metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.